What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here, and back to review the new movie, The Platform, which made its debut on Netflix today. Technically, it came out in Spain last year and played at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it won the People's Choice Award for Midnight Madness. But I found out today that New York is going into total lockdown starting Sunday evening, so you're going to be seeing a lot more videos like this from my channel in the future. And also, for all the people out there on Twitter and on YouTube who have been giving me recommendations of movies to cover, keep the recommendations coming, because I feel like right now we all need a lot more entertainment in our lives. And not to worry, I won't give away any spoilers from this movie until the end of my review, and I'll give you fair warning. But I'm not quite sure if this is the best movie to watch right now or the worst, because this is a hardcore, graphic genre film that does have a lot of interesting ideas at play and a lot of interesting conflicting messages. And before that sends you running screaming for the hills, not to worry, the director of this film and the writers of this film are not trying to beat you over the head with any specific agenda. But the premise is incredibly unusual, and you can infer from it a variety of conclusions. You essentially have this prison called the Hole, and in the Hole there's an unknown number of levels, and on each level you have two prisoners. And every day this platform lowers level by level, and in theory the platform should have enough food for everybody to get their fair share and for everybody to live with a certain degree of security, comfort, etc. But because people are people, they take what they want and leave the leftovers for the next level down. But the wrinkle that makes this movie so interesting is that at the end of every month, you get gassed and you and your roommate get sent to another level. So if you're on level 2 initially and eating like a king, you might be on level 100 and living off glass and metal the following month. And the reason I said this movie might either be the best movie to watch right now or the worst, because we are dealing with scarcity of certain essential resources. Case in point, the videos of people getting in fistfights over toilet paper. If a giant stack of toilet paper were placed on this platform in the movie, it would not make it all the way down. But before I get too carried away talking about the story, I should say up front, this is a Spanish language movie, and Netflix historically has done an almost reprehensible, embarrassing job of dubbing foreign films and making that the default setting. Do yourself a favor. If and when you watch this, choose to watch it in the original Spanish with English subtitles. You will have a much richer experience with much better acting and much better performances. And if you're one of those people that doesn't like to read subtitles, all I'll say is that this movie is only 94 minutes long. It has tons of gruesome violence, so don't worry, the amount of reading you'll be required to do is minimal at most. But the director of this movie's name is Gaztelu-Urrutia, if I'm saying that correctly. It's his first feature film. He has directed 2 shorts, and the screenplay is by David De Sola and Pedro Rivero. But the star of the movie, who holds everything together as the character Goreng, his name is Ivan Masague. And the story unfolds exclusively from his point of view, and what he knows, we know. And we actually get a really effective information dump early on, where his first roommate, who's been there for quite a while, slowly but surely answers all of his questions about how to survive in the hole. And I have to say, for a wild, far-fetched, fictional setting, the rules actually work and the movie is remarkably consistent. A perfect example is how if anybody on any level tries to save any food or resources from the platform as it goes down, their room will either become very hot or really cold until it kills them, eliminating that problem. The goal of the Hole is to see whether or not people can exercise enough restraint or sense of responsibility for their fellow human beings to share the food appropriately. But I love how this movie is incredibly practical, because everybody who goes in there has different points of view about how the Hole can function properly. Some people try to implore their upstairs and downstairs neighbors to only take what they need so that everybody gets their fair share. Some people threaten violence. Some people threaten to shit in the food. And some people, out of just pure desperation, if they've spent a month on a level that's deep, deep, deep in the hole, when they finally get a chance to be at the top, they feel totally justified in going completely berserk and eating far more than their fair share. And for people who want to interpret this movie as a form of class warfare, what's fun about it is that if you're the upper class one month, you very well might be the bottom of the barrel the following month, and everybody gets a chance to get some revenge, whether it's on their roommates or on their upstairs or downstairs neighbors or whatever the case might be. So it remains incredibly difficult for people to remain ideologically pure as they become increasingly desperate to survive, because if you're below a certain level, there will be nothing for you, ever. And if the movie sounds heavy-handed, trust me, it's not. There's so much humor, and there's so much excitement, and so much action every step of the way. And I love how the movie does not take a sentimental view of human nature. It's very candid and very honest about the absolute contempt a lot of human beings feel for those who are below them, as well as those who are above them. One of Goreng's roommates, he likes to spit on the people who are below, but he also likes to call the people above him bastards. For him, it's every man for himself, and to try to survive in any other way just makes you a communist. And structurally, the movie is really exciting because the main character, Goreng, he's voluntarily signed up for the Hold for 6 months because at the end of that 6 months, he'll get some form of diploma that'll change his life dramatically in the outside world. And so the movie basically comes in 6 chapters, with each one being dramatically better or dramatically worse than what came before. And there's an additional curveball for everybody inside the hole. You're allowed to bring one item with you, and that can be anything. You can bring a puppy dog, you can bring a weapon, you can bring a book. And throughout the movie, as we see what some people choose to bring to the hole, it just makes you laugh again and again and again, just seeing how absurd people are. That's one of the best parts about this movie, is that it's constantly poking fun at the absurdity of human beings. But of course, because this is a hardcore genre film, it's not really a horror film because you're not ever really afraid, but you'll certainly be grossed out every step of the way. But you see some absolutely ruthless, violent, disgusting behavior because pretty much everything down below a certain level is nothing but murder and suicide and cannibalism and despair. And as the movie states very clearly on the poster and in the opening line of the movie, there are 3 kinds of people in this world: the top, the bottom, and those who fall. So if, like me, you're facing an extended period where you're most likely going to be trapped in your home for a while, I strongly urge people to give this a go, but if and only if they have a taste for hardcore graphic genre entertainment. And the people who are into that kind of entertainment absolutely know who they are. I totally understand there are a lot of people out there right now who are not remotely in the mood to watch this kind of movie, but I feel like the timing of its release is surprisingly and eerily topical. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if at the end of 2020 that a lot of people look back on this movie as their favorite genre film of the year. The only thing that makes me tap the brakes at all on my enthusiasm is that in the last 10 or 15 minutes, the movie gets just frankly slow, dark, and depressing, as can be expected from a premise like this. But the journey getting there is so intense and so insane and so delightfully humorous and so delightfully barbaric. I was pretty much laughing and smiling almost every step of the way. And I feel like this film does something really well that a lot of clumsier or lesser filmmakers try to do with a lot of our beloved franchises, where we've seen a lot of filmmakers in recent years trying to insert incredibly obvious and heavy-handed messages into franchises that used to be a little more nuanced and subtle, or have no messages, period. But because this movie very resolutely and stubbornly refuses to spell out whatever message it's trying to deliver, it's going to excite a lot of debate and a lot of conversation and a lot of different forms of interpretation, which is what art is supposed to do in the first place. But that's as far as I can go without giving away spoilers. But there are a few key details in this movie that I have to acknowledge or discuss before I bring this review to a close. So once again, last spoiler warning, but I think my favorite moment of the movie is the beginning of month 2 when Goreng, after weeks and weeks and weeks of getting along with his roommate on level 48, admittedly, level 48's not that great because you've got nothing to live on but the leftovers of 94 people. But we see that they're able to get by. They're reading Don Quixote to each other. They could basically live here indefinitely if they had to, but there's this lingering suspicion that something horrible happened to Goreng's roommate's previous roommate, who's not around anymore. And making things even more suspicious is the fact that the roommate, the only thing he brought into the hole is this samurai knife that sharpens itself every time it's used. So Goreng is suspecting that his roommate ate his previous roommate. And sure enough, when Goreng wakes up at the beginning of month 2, he's bound and gagged to his bed, and his roommate basically tells him, look, I'm afraid, I'm old, I can't go for a month of fasting, and while I like you a lot, what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to, like a snail, purify you for a week, and then I'm going to start cutting little strips off of you that I'm going to feed to both of us, and don't worry, I won't touch your genitals, but perhaps we'll both make it to the end of the month. And that's just the reality of being on level 171. It is not a good place. But what's great is that you see that in contrast to level 0, where it's like the most exquisite gourmet kitchen you've ever seen. They have a live orchestra. Every piece of food that they create is like a work of art. And little things like getting a hair in a food results in this massive lecture to the entire staff. They're just living in a completely different universe with a completely different set of concerns. Meanwhile, down on level 171, you're hearing all the screams echoing up and down of all the different people as they wake up and realize what level they're on. And it's cool seeing the competing philosophies of the different people and how those philosophies start to kind of disintegrate or bend with the wind as time goes by, because Goreng's roommate blames all the people upstairs for what he's doing, while Goreng, he holds him personally responsible. And I love the subplot of this woman who keeps traveling up and down between all the various levels, murdering anybody who messes with her. And there's this story going around that she's looking for her child. But as we learn later on, obviously, she's an actress who came in to get prepared for a role. but luckily she's there to save Goreng's life after he's only had a piece of his leg hacked off. And probably the lowest point of the movie is when we see Goreng at the end of that month eating the maggot-ridden corpse of his roommate, and then he gets a little respite when he wakes up on level 33. And another wrinkle I loved was Goreng's roommate, who actually works for the VSC, the organization that runs the hole, and she's operating under the assumption that there are only 200 levels, and she completely totally believes that if people just behave responsibly and ration their food, that there'll be plenty of food for all. And she's constantly trying to hammer home that message to the people below her, and they're just like, fuck you, we've been starving, blah, blah, blah. And you could call her idealistic or you could call her naive, but the fact that she brought in her dog as her one item tells you all you need to know about her. But as we soon learn, she has no understanding of this place where she works, because they wake up on 202 and she immediately kills herself, leaving Goreng with the only option of surviving off her corpse for the next month, and her corpse is completely riddled with cancerous sores. And that's one of the things that I liked about this movie, is how she's been hammering home this idea of human beings being forced to learn the importance of solidarity and creating something resembling a utopia, but she didn't even have all the facts at her fingertips, never realizing that level 202 is not even close to the bottom of the hole. But what really made me fall in love with this movie is when Goreng wakes up on level 6. He's only got 1 month to go after that. He knows he's going to make it, and he gets a new roommate who's trying to use a rope to climb out of the place entirely. And as he's begging and pleading the people upstairs to hang onto the rope so he can climb up, they're asking him about his religion. And he's claiming he worships the one true God, but they're disagreeing on what is the one true God. And this girl upstairs ends up taking a dump right in his face. Whereupon Goreng comes up with this idea that they're going to ride the platform all the way down, and they're not going to let anybody eat until they hit level 51, and that he and his roommate are going to hand out the rations of food, and they're going to kill or fight anybody who tries to stop them. And I think that if they ride it all the way down, then they can ride it all the way back up to the top and send a message to level 0. And the movie just becomes so badass and so hardcore at this point, with the two of them standing back to back, fighting off everybody who's coming after them. It's basically a suicide mission. But this is what great genre entertainment should do. Great genre entertainment, especially low-budget genre entertainment, should show you things that you would never see in a million years in a big-budget Hollywood movie. And I just love the fact that Netflix is using their platform to acquire and distribute and make available this kind of entertainment. I know a lot of people out there like to bash Netflix for a variety of reasons, but the reality is they produce and acquire a lot of content that would never be made available otherwise. So for every stupid Adam Sandler movie that they make that is beneath contempt, they have something like the platform for me to enjoy. So I'm all in on Netflix, and I hope that Netflix will continue to make cool stuff available for the next few months as we endure this period of wild unpredictability. So before I wrap this video up, I should mention a couple other movies that have been made available after only a week in theaters. The Hunt is now available online, but one that I really enjoyed was The Witch Subversion. That actually came out in South Korea in 2018, but wasn't made available in America till I think early last week, maybe like 10 days ago. But it's a hardcore R-rated super-powered adventure story. It's not really a superhero movie because nobody dresses up in costumes, but the action scenes show in much more gruesome fashion what would happen when people with enhanced speed and enhanced strength actually fight. The PG-13 world of superhero movies doesn't begin to get it right. If someone like Thor punches somebody in the face, it would get ugly. So I strongly recommend The Witch Subversion. I might end up reviewing it anyway, even though I'm like 10 days behind, but I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. I'm trying to get caught up on Ozark before season 3 comes out next week. So if you like this video review, please consider subscribing to the channel, hit that notification bell, keep the recommendations coming out there, and if you want to talk more about movies immediately, hunt me down on Twitter at Colbrax. But thanks so much for watching, really appreciate it, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.